All right, everybody, we're just going to jump right in. I got a couple announcements to start, and then we'll get to our speaker session. So our membership dues are due at this point, 40 semester, 60 for the entire year. If you are having any trouble with paying dues at all, just come talk to me and we can try to figure something out. So please get those dues in. Next up, I wanted to point out our website to you guys. So raise your hand if you've been on our website at all. Okay, a couple people. All right, so we got a lot of good resources. We just revamped our whole website. I'm just gonna take you to it real quick, actually, show you a couple resources, but you should bookmark this website, check it out. Lots of good resources on here. So if you click our member resources page, we have all of our previous meetings, like we're putting up recordings as well as the physical presentations up on there. And then this is the most important part I wanted to point out here, our professional development page. So we've been working on getting together a bunch of resources for you guys, like internship and job opportunities. We also curated our own list of job and internships from our network of speakers that we have. So looks like this. We have 6 opportunities listed right now. We're just going to be updating that kind of on like a rolling basis throughout the semester. So if you want any job internship opportunities, if you have any questions about them, our Director of Professional Development is Zach right here. Zach, raise your hand. So see Zach if you have any questions about any job or internship opportunities. And then next up, we want to get some feedback from our members. It's really important that we get your feedback so we can do our spring programming and just give you guys a better experience. So you notice on your tables, there's a bunch of graphics printed out where you can fill out that feedback form. I also have it up here. I'm going to send out an email after the meeting as well to kind of recap all this information. But we'd really appreciate it if you give us some feedback. It should only take 5-10 minutes to fill that form out, just so we can give you guys a better experience in ESA. Also, one more thing I wanted to announce, we've made some changes to the executive board. So right here is Drew. He's our new vice president. So say hi to Drew. And then we also have a new director of operations, and that's Yusuf in the back there. Towards the end of the meeting, Yusuf is going to be giving out t-shirts, the ESA t-shirts. So if you've paid your dues, just go see Yusuf and he'll get you an ESA t-shirt. All right, and that's all the announcements I got for today. So if you guys would like to come up and have a seat here. So today we have a really cool meeting for y'all. It's Obel Hernandez and his son Obel from Bean2Bean Coffee Company. Obel is the founder and president of Bean2Bean Coffee, and his son Obel is the vice president of strategic partnerships. So they're going to tell us a little bit about Bean2Bean's founding story, kind of how they got to where they are today, and then we're going to open it up for a Q&A at the end. All right, so I hope you guys enjoy.
Hey guys, good morning. How's everybody doing? Good. Did you have coffee before this event? Anybody? Yeah. Where'd you go for your coffees? Jaroka. Okay. You raised your hand. Where'd you get coffee? You made your own. All right. What kind of coffee did you use? Just a K cup? Sorry to hear that. Yeah. Cool. So I'm Obel Jr. This is my dad, Obel Sr. And he's the founder of Bean2Bean. It's our family-owned company. We've been in business. Next year will be our 10th year in business. And I am a Temple alum, 2015, graduated from STHM with a sports management degree. My background has been in sports before I got into coffee. I did an internship. I did the Disney program internship. Then I got an internship with the Houston Astros. From there, I went to go work for the Minnesota Twins and help them open up their new ballpark, Target Field. From there, I got a job with the New York Mets. And then I was recruited to go down to help the Atlanta Braves open up their new ballpark. And after that, I came back home and wanted to work in the family business. And, you know, I didn't drink coffee before I got involved with the business. So I was telling somebody before, my dad would always ask me, how do I make money if you don't drink coffee? And so I had to start drinking it. And, you know, it's been a fun and busy and hard 10 years. There's ups and downs, especially the last 2 years. But if anything, we know that especially now, coffee is recession proof. People will always be drinking coffee. So it's a great business to be into. Um, and my dad could tell you about his background. Started with General Foods. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so I started way back in 1985. Started with, I was just looking for a job, walking.
I wasn't even born yet.
I was walking down this Wall Street area, saw this agency, hiring agency. I went upstairs to whatever it was, the second floor, and they asked me, "What do you do?" Prior to that, I was working for Dun and Bradstreet. So I said, "Well, I know how to enter stuff in a computer." It was one of those big things, right? And they said, "Oh, you know how to enter data into a computer?" I says, "Yeah." So there's a company called General Foods that is looking for someone to just enter data into the computer. And I says, "All right." So I went on the interview, and I was interviewed by a fellow called Dario Gomez. He's Colombian fellow. He was the manager of the biggest coffee company in the world at the time, called Maxwell House Coffee. How many of you have heard of Maxwell House? So yeah, they, at the time when I first started there, we were purchasing over 6 million bags of coffee annually.
And a bag is 152 pounds, not the ones you see in the store.
So he interviewed me, asked me if I wanted the job. I said, sure. And that's where it all began for me. General Foods was purchased by Kraft Foods. How many of you have ever heard of Kraft Foods, right?
Everybody has that mac and cheese, right? The
Oreo
microwavable one
cookies.
in the dorms.
Right? Yeah, those Oreo cookies are expensive now. I just went to the supermarket. I wanted to grab one. I said, oh, forget that. All right. So, but yeah, so I started with Maxwell House way back then. I've been in the coffee business for over 35 years. Obel says it's been 10 years, but I started the company prior to 2013, where we became incorporated. Started it out of my garage in my basement. And then shortly after that, we moved it over to down here to Philly on Hope Street. And then shortly after that, we have a 3,000 square foot warehouse where we kind of operate mostly out of these days. But the company keeps growing and growing, and it's growing because now I have Obel, I have my younger son, I have another fellow that Obel's known for many, many years. They kind of run the operation, and I'm just a pretty face.
Yeah. So we started, as my dad said before, he started the company before 2013, but that's when we incorporated. So that's something you guys probably need to learn if you don't know already about how to incorporate. We started out as a LLC, and then when I came on board, and my brother and my oldest friend, his name is John, known us since kindergarten, we decided to switch it to an S corp. There's reasons for that for tax purposes. It allows you to do how to move money around a little bit differently, how to keep more of your money. So look into that. I don't like giving money away, and I don't like especially giving it to the government. So that's a big reason why we switched. Yeah.
Let me say this, that when between 2010 and 2013, just around 2010, 2011, I was doing the whole thing by myself, out of my garage, out of my basement. I was doing everything. And I got to the point where I said, you know what, I don't think I'm going to continue doing this any longer. And then that's when Obel came in and said, Dad, just hang in there. Let me get into this with you. And that's when he started in. And that's when this other fellow, Jonathan, came in, and Gabriel came in later. But I got to a point where I felt like I don't know how much I can make this grow all by myself. And that's important for anyone that's getting into any business, really. You have to know when to fold, and I got to that point. But then shortly after that, I realized that maybe I could, if these guys are going to jump into this, I felt like they had enough savvy, enough education, enough wisdom to kind of make this happen. And we've grown significantly since that day. And I kind of, like I said, I'm just a pretty face. I kind of roll with the punches. I do a whole lot of things. Maybe more than I thought. I'd be retired by now, but I do a whole lot of things. I keep myself really, really busy. So I do that because again, I have 35 years worth of experience, but I have a license from the New York Board of Trades to certify coffees. There's only about 40 of us in the entire, not only the entire country, but the entire world.
That's a division of the New York Stock Exchange that grades coffees and chocolate. It's a really cool place to go visit and smell.
Yeah, so if they'll call when coffee starts coming in. There's a lot of coffee in the state of, especially in the state of Jersey and New York, but there's a lot of coffees throughout the country that are stored in warehouses, and that coffee starts getting older as the new crop starts coming in. The people that own that coffee, they want to get the most that they could out of that coffee, is price wise. So they, whatever the market value is, they will, they're hoping to get that market value, but their coffee is beginning to get older. So that's where I come in. And I do this with, there's a panel of 3 graders that will sit down and physically inspect the coffee, and then we'll actually taste it. And then we'll either pass or fail that coffee. And if we pass it, then they can sell that coffee up against the board and get maximum value for it. If we fail it, then they have to do whatever they can do to sell the coffee.
It's kind of like getting your cards graded, like baseball cards. We send it in, they examine it, and then they give it a grade. It's worth more if it's a higher grade, worth less if it's not. So that's kind of what he's explaining there. And I would say, as far as entrepreneurship, I had no desire to actually become an entrepreneur. Well, my dad probably will get into this a little bit, like how he started the company and why. But I always liked the idea of doing something new and creating something new and having my own touch on it, and the ability to make the decisions that I can see the results of. What I did for those baseball organizations that I worked for was create these event departments where we would use the stadium to generate additional revenue. And when the new stadiums were opening, they didn't know how to do that. So it was really a business within a business. I had to hire people. I had to put together an organizational chart about who we're going to hire and what for. I had to deal with budgets. So it was really like being an entrepreneur within a larger organization, which was great because I had the financial support from the larger organization. But I think that's where I got my bite for being an entrepreneur. Also with the Atlanta Braves, there was a change in the front office. So with that position, I got let go. And that really made me think I don't want to have to report to anybody except myself anymore. So that was another reason why I did get back involved with like the business and wanted to be an entrepreneur. I don't know if that's some of the desires of you guys, but I think it's also important before you do that to get some experience working with others, because you can get it free experience pretty much. And that's what I was able to do with those other organizations. As far as like education goes, I took a couple classes at CCP before transferring into Temple. And that's where I started learning about business. And that's when I told my dad in 2013 about incorporating. He was just a sole proprietor and he didn't know anything about incorporating, neither did I. But I was like, hey, our professor is telling me like, if we have this business to protect ourselves legally, we should probably become an LLC. And we did that in 2013. So with my dad, we moved to Minnesota. He started roasting coffee for Caribou Coffee. If you guys are familiar with that, they're a big Midwest company, but they're growing larger in the US. They were bought out by a hedge fund recently, a couple years ago. And it's just really been a fun grind. just we're learning every day. And if you guys do me a favor, follow us on Instagram, you can see a lot of the cool stuff that we're doing. We're at Bean2Bean Coffee Co. And our values as a company are SAGE, which is support, artistry, generosity, and education. And we teach people about coffee, but we're still learning every day. One of the recent things that we're going to be posting in the next couple of weeks is an interview my dad had with his coffee mentor, the guy who was talking about, whose name is Dario, where they did a interview one-on-one, and it's in Spanish. We'll put English subtitles to it, but even that guy was telling my dad, like, you're always learning, and we were learning in that interview. So always keep striving to learn more. I think there's a lot of, depending what field you want to go in, there's a lot of publications to always see what's happening, keep up with it. I like to always set a time frame for myself to read what's happening in the industry. I usually do it Mondays in the afternoon when things slow down a little bit, just to read all the coffee publications that are out there, just so I'm aware, because I've had times where people come up to me and talk to me about things happening in the industry and I didn't know anything about it. And I feel a little foolish. Like, this is where I make my bread and butter. This is how I make money. How do I not know about these things? But other people do. So that's a piece of advice I would share with you guys too. Like, make sure you're keeping up with what's going on. You should know just as much as the people who are approaching you.
Yeah, just wanted to finish up that one thought, and that is that, so I am the only guy in all of Pennsylvania, kind of toot my own horn here, right? In all of Pennsylvania, I'm the only guy that has a license to grade and certify coffees for the New York Board of Trades. So we were living in New York. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, and I got this job at Kraft Foods. I worked there for 20 years. When we decided, my wife and I, she had worked for her company for 20 years, decided to move to, for a lot of reasons, to Minnesota. That's where Caribou Coffee is headquartered. But I started working for a company called Super Value. And they're the second, third largest grocer in the nation. They own Acme Foods here in PA. So I started working with them, left them, went to Caribou Coffee, worked for Caribou Coffee for a little bit. They had offered me a position. That position never materialized. So I said, all right, goodbye. But living in Minnesota was the culture there, the weather, the length of the cold, and the whole thing. So, yeah, you get up in the mornings in Minnesota. We were in South Minnesota. Southern Minnesota, where it's a little bit warmer.
So cold. We didn't have to keep the milk in the fridge. We could keep it in the garage in the wintertime and it would stay cold.
Yeah, because you get up in the mornings and it's typically during the winter, it's about 15, 20, this is almost every day, 15, 20 degrees below zero every morning. So I had enough of that. And I says, we're going to move back east. I didn't want to go back to New York. We always spent a lot of time in PA. So I said, we'll move to PA. We found a place in Pennsylvania. And that's when I kind of decided to start my own coffee business, since that was pretty much the only thing I really knew after working at Maxwell House for 20 years. So I said, you know what? And I was working in at a mission, working with families for when I was living in New York, in the Brooklyn area. I worked there for 20 years as well. And I came to the place and I said, what do I really want to do? I said, you know what? I think I'd like to continue this this journey in coffee, and I'd like to use it to help people. And that's kind of like the original thought. So then, yeah, I was doing a whole lot of coffee roasting, working with people that could help me. And whenever I had an opportunity to help, we're going to be doing a pause event this coming Saturday. We're going to help the little doggies and cats and all that fun stuff. Obel could tell you more about pause. But yeah, that's kind of like how Bean2Bean got started. Started when I was looking for something to do when I got back east, and I got to the place where I says, really, I mean, the only thing I really know is coffee, so I might as well just stick with it.
Yeah, and things developed from there when myself, my brother, and John came on board. Um, John has a food background from St. Joe's, you know, yeah. Uh, but he was in food his whole career, his whole life was food sales. So he was a great person to bring on. And because I've known him so long, he's like family to me, so we could trust him. Um, and then my brother, he's still learning. He's still in school, and he's doing work at Bean2Bean and also going to school. And then my background was in events and partnerships and things like that. So we all had a little bit of something that we brought that could make Bean2Bean different than the other companies that were out there. And things always evolve. So don't get stuck. Another piece of advice, I guess, in like, this is my role, this is what I need to do. Especially if you're the only person in the business, like you have to do everything. But if you have different partners, make sure those partners are a good fit for your business and a good fit for you. You don't want to bring in the wrong person who's has a different idea of how the company should go unless you both agree, because that's going to create tension. Um, make sure you have a good operating agreement with your partners. Try to think as much ahead as you can, things that you might not expect. Like in our contract, even though we're all family and friends, like we have a way that we know if we're ever going to sell the business, who gets what percentage, how it breaks down. If my dad retires, how his shares get divided between the company. Um, so these are things that are very important to think about when you're creating an S corp. If you have other partners, if you're by yourself, I mean, it's relatively easy. But I think, yeah, you have to think as much down the line and as far ahead as you can. You're not going to find everything out at the. You'll learn that along the way, but there's ways to also addend contracts. So. Yeah, I think that's we're always changing roles too. My dad's role not so much because we don't have the coffee knowledge that he does combined, all three of us. So he really sticks with the coffee side of things, sourcing our coffees with importers that he's known from his years in the business, but also direct to the farms, working with farmers down there to bring us some pretty fun and exciting coffees. My role has changed where I was kind of focusing on marketing, then it changed more to branding and partnerships. And as we grow and as we grew as a company, it kind of like understood where our strengths were and we played to those strengths. Where we were weak, we hired people. So that's something also to don't be afraid to give up some control if it's going to help out your business. We've brought in a director of marketing because while we think we're really good at it, there's some people who are better. Graphic design, none of us have no clue with that. So we were outsourcing it, and now we brought in a person in-house to help speed up that process as well. So we try to hire where we're weak, and I think that's another important thing to know when growing a business. Um, we could, yeah, Q&A.
Questions? Got one right here. I'm gonna bring you the mic.
Yeah, we're better with Q&A.
Where'd the name come from?
Good question. I'll let my dad tell you that.
Yeah, so originally when I left New York to go to Minnesota, I was going to start my own coffee business in Minnesota with my brother-in-law, who's married to an attorney. And so we moved out to Minnesota, and the idea was to start this coffee business, but he was kind of stumbling along, and I said to him, hey, whenever you're ready, let me know. And that's when I went out and started looking for work. And I interviewed with a couple of large companies, Super Value, Cargill, who does a whole lot of different commodities out there in Minnesota. And so, so my brother-in-law was the one that actually came up with the name Bean2Bean. And so, I mean, years after that, I was in Minnesota for close to 5 years. It wasn't until I got back to Pennsylvania that I said, you know, I'm going to stick to that. That name kind of has a nice ring to it. The idea was, he got that name really from me because I was explaining to him how that a coffee cherry, when it's on the tree, is that it goes from being green to yellow to red. And inside that coffee cherry, there's actually two beans, almost like a peanut, right? That are kind of stuck together. And that's where we got the name Bean2Bean, because there's two beans in a pod.
And with our logo, you see that there's beans on there, and there's 4 beans, and there's 4 owners of the company. Yeah. And that goes like, I love that question too, because it goes towards our education with our values, with SAGE, because it allows us to educate people. And that's one of the ways we educate them. Not too many people know that coffee's a fruit. Like, how many people here knew that coffee was a fruit? Coffee's a fruit, yeah. It grows on a tree, like my dad said, and those little cherries are the 2 seeds, and that's what gets roasted to make coffee. So whenever we can educate people on coffee, we love doing that.
So if you go to country of origin, in Central America in particular, they actually call the cherry, they call it a grape, uva.
So how did you guys go about like taking your business from kind of plan after what was the thing that you know what we're doing to actually get? How did you establish operations? How did you market yourself?
Yeah, in the beginning, so I said I took that business class at CCP, and then I took a business course here with Professor Kunkel. I don't know if you guys know him. I took a business, I forgot the name of the class, but it was kind of like an intro to business. And we talked about building your strategy for your business. And we put some ideas down. I don't think we actually ever opened that again after putting it down, but it helped create a framework of what we wanted to do. And the business originally, when I came on board with my brother and John, we saw there was an opportunity to actually sell green coffee. That's the raw material before it gets roasted, to coffee roasters. We saw margins there, and we were like, let's do that, because those margins are really good. There's a lot less work. There's a lot less overhead. We just need to coordinate getting the green coffee to the roasters. So not a lot of work in between. There's a lot of competition in that field that we didn't know too much about, or how to break in and grow. There's a lot of logistics that we weren't aware of. There's a lot of making sure vendors pay on time. Honestly, I think that's probably the biggest reason why we got out of that side of the business, was because our cash flow was tough. We didn't have line of credit at that time, being such a small business. Revenue was actually negative. We weren't making money. So once we figured that out, and we saw what actually the roasters were doing and the margins they were making, we said, we already have the connections with importing coffee. We're just going to roast it ourselves now too. So that really changed the model of what we started to do, and how we changed our business. We were doing that for about 3 years before we switched directions. And there's no fun ways to really market green coffee. But there's a lot of fun, cool ways to market roasted coffee, and a lot of cool things you could do with it. Like the coffee that you guys are drinking back there today, we partnered with Charisse McGill, who has also spoke to you guys before, on creating that French toast coffee. We've done collabs with whiskey companies and mezcal companies to age our coffee in their barrels. We might be doing some other collaborations with confections and bakeries and things like that. Just so there was way more things to do with the roasted side of the business and how to market it. And that's how we kind of switched to that. Does that answer everything? Yeah, cool.
Whenever you have an idea You have to be really sure, that this is what you want to do. I actually, like I said, we started this company 2010, probably before that a little bit, but I invested right from the beginning, all by myself. Well, these guys joined the team. I invested $50,000 to get this whole thing going, and I got to the place where, like I said, yeah, I don't think I want to spend any more money because I'm not too sure what's going to happen here, and so you get to those crossroads. Do I, what am I, am I going to invest more money? Am I going to really get this money back? So you got to know, when to hold them, and you got to know when to fold them. You got to, really, those decisions are very, very difficult based on your passion, your dedication, and the love of the product, the whole thing. And so you'll probably, regardless of the product, you're probably going to get to a place where you're going to say, should I continue? Should I stop? Should I invest more money into this thing? You might get there one day, but you're going to have to kind of really go based on, it's always a really difficult crossroad. So you're going to have to really measure your pros and cons and decide at one point or another if you're going to go for it or if you're going to just say, let me reach out and see what else is out there.
It's important to have that strategy. What we like to do is have a short-term goal of 3 years, and then our 5-year plan, and then a 10-year plan. 3 years, when you're first starting, I would say expect to lose money your first year. Second year, you probably want to break even, and third year should be the year you start to make revenue. That changes depending on what your product is. Like, I heard this podcast where Sam Adams, the brewery, Boston Beer Company, they started making money in 5 months. They were profitable. So it really depends on your product, but having that strategy in place so you know where you are along your path of growth, or if you're not growing, and what you want to do at that time, what decision you want to make. Do you want to bring on a partner? Do you want to shut it down, or do you want to keep at it by yourself?
And here's an example. I mean, I decided that I was going to shut everything down around 2010 or so. And then Obel stepped in, and this other fellow, Jonathan, stepped in. And so then I reversed course. And I said, all right, if you guys think you can make things, if you can turn things around, then let's continue the madness and let's keep going at it. And we did. And, we're rocking and rolling.
Yeah, that was the first year where we switched from the green coffee to roasted coffee. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. I'm just wondering, how you guys deal with competitions, how you guys deal with the already dominant people in the industry like Starbucks, and how do you guys start small and stand out? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that question. We get that a lot. Starbucks, they're so big. We don't see them as a competitor. We're just happen to be in the same market, coffee. Our competitors are more in the local and regional. There's Loch Lomond, there's Green Street. These guys, some of them are friends of ours, and other of them are just competition. But I think what sets us apart, I told you our values: the support, artistry, generosity, and education. It's expected that we should have great coffee. I don't think that anybody should say that's what sets us apart, because if you don't have something great, why are you in this business? And a lot of people say maybe sustainability is what sets them apart, or having organic coffees. We have all that. We don't really express that or point that out too much because it's just what we do. But what sets us apart are those values. We do a lot of work with the arts. If you follow us on Instagram, 90 to 95% of the videos and photography are done by local artists. And that helps expand our network, because now we're working with local artists who maybe didn't know who we were, and they'll share the product within their network, and it'll just expand, help bring attention and awareness to who we are as a brand. Also, my dad, nobody in Philadelphia has the coffee experience of over 45 years that he does, going to different origins and being that coffee grader for the New York Stock Exchange. Nobody can say that. And then as we don't have a storefront, our focus is mostly on wholesale and food service. And then we do e-commerce through our website. On the wholesale side of things, our service is better than anybody's in Philadelphia. So if you're a cafe owner, actually somebody called us today that they're having an issue with their machine. We'll be there later today to fix it. We have the ability and the strategy in place to do that. And being such a larger ownership group where there's 4 owners, we have the ability to do that. I think some of these other smaller roasters, maybe there's only 2 people, so they're limited to what they can do, but we have a larger group that allows us to answer and solve problems fast.
Yeah, the coffee market is really saturated. There's a lot of people out there that are trying to get into the business, and they've started their own business. I mean, just a ton of them. It actually makes me laugh. I see it coming through social media in one way or another. This company and the names that are out there, you know, there's like just so many of them out there. And you know, I realize that you have to really know when you're talking to potential customers, you have to know the difference between the bad, the good, and the ugly. And so if you don't know the difference between a Volkswagen and a Cadillac, and most of the people that are in the business don't, especially when you're dealing with some of the coffee importers that have been in the business for many, many years, they'll do it to you. You know, you want specialty coffee, and they'll sell you commercial coffee without you knowing about it. It may be good coffee. It may have the appearance of being good coffee. And, you know, then you have to have the experience of coffee tasting. Your palate is the one that tells you everything. You could put whatever coffee that you want in front of me. It doesn't really trouble me at all until I taste it. Once I taste it, then I feel like I'm the guy that's going to take charge from here on in. I'll tell you if this coffee is where it's actually coming from, what the characteristics and the potential for that coffee is. A whole lot of the people that get into the business, they don't know that, and so they get, you know, the short end of the stick when it comes to dealing with these sharks out there.
You also have to know and be able to accept rejection, I think, and move on quickly from it. Learn from it, but move on quickly. There's people who we approach with coffee where we think ours is better than what they have. We provide better service, but they still don't want us. So it's like, okay, can you tell us why? Maybe they'll share with us, like, we want a coffee company that has this and we don't have it. Okay, we don't have it. That's not who we are as a company. Thank you. We'll move on. So also keep that in mind when you're approaching customers and trying to generate new sales. Short.
Thanks, guys. Can you talk a little bit about the family dynamic, like working in a family business, or does it bring hardships, or is it easier to build trust?
Yeah, so I'm a pretty easygoing guy. Unless I have a major objection to something, then we don't really go back and forth. Everybody kind of knows where their place is. So Obel's never gonna really argue with me about a green coffee purchase because he knows he'll lose. So, but, and I'm not gonna, you know, this is kind of the way it works. If he and Jonathan are creating this marketing idea that's going to cost us some kind of branding that's going to cost us money, and we have what do you call it, a number, right? So if if it's a budget where if you go over $5,000, then we all have to kind of agree that we're going to head in that direction and spend that kind of money. But for the most part, if Jonathan, who's in charge of operations, decided he wants to spend, $2,000, $3,000 on some kind of an idea, I don't question it at all, and that's his expertise. So I'm not going to really go back and forth with them, and I've told them this before. Do whatever you want as long as you don't argue with me about green coffee.
That's something good that my dad was saying in our ownership agreement. We have a dollar value where if a decision needs to be made that it's going to exceed that amount, we all have to agree on it as a group, or at least have a conversation about it. Otherwise, day to day can proceed as needed. People say don't get into business with your family or friends. I did both, and it works fine for me. I actually even lived with my friend while we were starting this company in Northern Liberties, when we moved it from my dad's basement to our basement here. And we lived together and we worked together, so we saw each other all the time. Our relationship, we're both really good at keeping business and friendship. We've never gotten to any big arguments, and I can't say that for everybody. It's just how I grew up. My dad, with me and my brother, if there's any altercations, like, he'll jump in, but it's really, honestly, I think it comes from my dad, how he raised us. Like, any conflicts, we'll deal with it, but like, there's never any hate there. Maybe we have to walk away for a little bit, come back later and discuss it, but we don't have that problem.
That's a good question, though. I mean, yeah, just watch Judge Mathis. You'll see that stuff happening all the time. Families, it's a horrible thing.
All right, one more.
First and foremost, thank you both for being here. It's very great information, very informative. For Obel Sr., I've always been one to really appreciate having such industry experience and, making the decision to start your own company. While you were working for the larger coffee companies, were there maybe like 3 things in particular that you saw that you could change by starting Bean2Bean Coffee? Like, what was the inspiration or the things that you saw operationally in those companies that led to the inspiration and the ultimate implementation of starting Bean2Bean?
Yeah, I got to a place where I said, this commercial coffee thing, I don't really want to. If I'm going to start my own coffee company, I don't want to start there. I want to go straight into the specialty coffee. And in reality, specialty coffee is a whole lot easier than commercial coffee. There's a lot more complications on the commercial side than there is on the specialty side. So that was one of the first things that I kind of got a hold of. Yeah, working for these larger coffee companies, there's a whole bunch of different things that you kind of pick up along the way, and some of the things that you learn real quick, some of the things that you don't want to do, and so you just you take the things that you've learned and you apply them to situational things in your own business that work. So that was the major thing. Like if you go to commercial coffees, I tell, like, Maxwell House, they do a good job. They do a really good job because they have, I'm almost sure that they still, because I talked to some of the guys that still sell coffee to Maxwell House, they still use what they call defects or imperfections. They use about 235 defects in their coffees. We have close to 0 defects in our coffee. So that's why it's that much easier to deal with specialty coffee. And I don't, when I'm tasting specialty coffee, when I purchase specialty coffee, I don't look, and I was having this discussion with the guy that hired me many years ago. When I go into when I taste coffee, I don't look for off notes, defects, or anything like that. I do when I'm tasting commercial coffee, but not when I'm tasting specialty coffee. Bad notes will always hit you like this, right? And kind of, you can kind of amplify that as a whole, as a business, whatever product you're selling, you'll know when something is not right. At least you should get to the place where you can identify, you know, that's not good, right? So you go with your gut when it comes to a lot of things in the business. Specialty coffee, you know, when you taste it, you're not looking for defects. You're looking for nuances. You're looking for, you know, I bought this coffee as a you know, strictly high grown coffee, but it tastes more like a strictly high grown. So I'm going to take this coffee and I'm going to use it somewhere else at, you know, where it's better, where I can make better use and make about maybe 2 cents a pound. So I hope I answered your question. Yeah.
All right. Unfortunately, we're out of time for questions, but let's get a round of applause.
Thank you. We'll stick around a little bit if you guys, anybody else had any other questions?
All right. Yeah. So they'll be hanging out here if you want to ask them any other questions. Big thank you to you guys. We really appreciate you coming in. Thank you for the coffee as well. We really enjoyed it. And special shout out to Joe Green, owner of Affinity Connections. Thank you for the desserts.
Yeah, there's bottles of cold brew. You guys take that with you, please. And there's the hot cups as well, French toast coffee.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. We got the suitable code and the dues code up here.